My name is John Mahoney, Coordinator of Jazz Studies at Loyola University, New Orleans, and I'd like to have our student musicians introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jaime Ortiz from Panama City, Panama. I'm a bass player. I love Benny Golson.
My name is James Martin. I'm from here in New Orleans. I'm a double major in music business and jazz studies, and I've been playing 3 different saxophones today.
Well, my name is Eric Chevrud. I was raised in St. Louis, and I'm a saxophone player and a jazz studies major.
My name is Kyle Charmatero. I am the middle third of the St. Louis trifecta here at the end of the line. I play the drums, and I'm really excited about being here today. It's an honor.
My name is Peter Moreno. I'm also from St. Louis. I play the guitar, and I'm really excited about getting to play with Benny today.
My name's Dave Schroeder. I'm the Director of Jazz Studies at New York University, and I'm glad to be here today to talk to you guys about Benny Golson and his life, and what exactly does that mean? I'm just going to throw out some questions here to you guys, and when we hear the name Benny Golson, what does that mean to you? Just a short answer.
I mean, it's an extraordinary musician, big influence. I love his work since the Jazz Messengers and before that and everything after that. He's been an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. He's a great composer. I mean, many of the songs that he has written, like we study in improv, we play here almost regularly. They're staples of jazz idiom.
Mm-hmm. I think his tunes are really what stands out the most about him. I've never met the guy. I'm looking forward to meeting him today, but all of his tunes definitely have they're not the simplest songs. They all have something very interesting going on in them, and they're a whole lot of fun to play. We've really been digging into them these last couple of days, kind of arranging them for ourselves and playing them the classic way on other tunes. So it's been kind of fun just messing around with this music. It's been cool.
Yeah, I think Benny Golson is a phenomenal saxophone player. I was lucky enough to see him at the Jazz and Heritage Festival yesterday. It was a really great set that he did, and like these guys have said, I think his compositions are very unique, and I really like them.
Mm-hmm. Well, the exciting thing here today is that most people never get to meet and interact with jazz legends. We consider Benny Golson somebody who was a contemporary of John Coltrane, of Philly Joe Jones, of Jimmy and Percy Heath, other great jazz legends, and they're still here today, people like Benny. What does that feel like that, we probably all listen to records and imagine what these people are like, and now today we're going to actually meet this man and talk to him and interact musically.
Oh man, it's overwhelming. I mean, the second I heard that I was maybe going to play for Benny Golson, it's just amazing. I couldn't believe it. And it's just ever since that day till today, it's just been, a positive mind and thinking about how I'm going to approach the music and how am I going to talk to him. He seems like he's going to be a really interesting guy.
Mm-hmm. I think the hardest thing is just is like when you're going to play with somebody like that, is just to try and trick yourself almost and put yourself in the mindset of like playing in your bedroom or something, and still try to relax and do everything the same and not like try to sound good or anything like that. I feel like that's really difficult to that's an experience thing, It's very valuable to play with them and get over being scared.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. This is the 6th so far in a series of jazz masterclasses that we've produced, and we found that there's a different expectation each time the students actually meet and play and get feedback and interact with the artist. What do you think is your expectation today? What do you think you're going to come away with this?
I have no clue what to expect, but basically I'm going into this, like Kyle was saying, trying to be as calm as possible, because this is a great experience, a great learning experience. So I want to get as much as I can from this.
I would hope that he would give a good, honest critique. I'd like to definitely come away with something that I could work on, I guess.
Hearing from someone like Benny Golson, I think it's going to be really interesting to know, what aspects of my own playing someone like him thinks are good, and more importantly, I guess, what he's not hearing enough of or too much of, what I need to work on. I think he'll be a really great source for that.
Benny not only worked with John Coltrane at Count Basie, but with Davy Jones and the Monkees.
Yeah.
So that's pretty diverse, right?
Yeah.
What does that say? I mean, does that happen so much today? Do we know artists that consider working that wide of genre?
Yeah, I don't, if it happens anywhere, I'd say it probably happens in New Orleans. Because people got to scrape it together sometimes, you know.
I was going to ask what your first association with Benny Golson might have been. If you can remember back, when's the first time you identified him as either a jazz artist or a composer, if you could just remember that. It'd be interesting to hear.
Jazz Messengers. That's pretty much one of the first bands I started listening to when I started getting into jazz. And just looking at the credits, thinking to myself, who's this saxophonist, was just blowing my mind away. And Benny Golson. He was there before Wayne Shorter. And he was great.
Mine was like in high school we played Killer Joe, but it kind of just went over my head, and I didn't know. I knew the name Benny Golson, but I hadn't really checked him out. And until we started playing the song Stablemates in our improv class, and that was when I really was like, wow, this tune has got something going on, I want to hear more of this stuff. And then realizing that like Blues March on the Moanin' album, it's like a CD I've listened to 10 million times. I never knew that was written by him, just because I listened to it before I looked at who wrote songs when I was in high school and before that. So it's kind of been like, it's been exposed to me, but it's been a matter of when I was hip enough to realize that it was going on around me, It's been there all the time.
Yeah, it's basically the same with me. I mean, in marching band, my sophomore year, we played an arrangement of Killer Joe and marched around the field. And I mean, I'd only been playing for like 3 months or so, but I mean, I didn't know who Benny Golson was, but I was playing his music, so I mean, he's that implemented in our society.
What about, besides being a great saxophone player and a writer, in the jazz idiom, we see historically that he also wrote for television and films and was even commissioned to write for the great violinist Itzhak Perlman. It's like crossing over all those boundaries. What does that make you guys consider? I mean, you're coming here as jazz students, jazz study students. How does that make you think, well, what am I going to do, just jazz, or do I transcend the concept of music and diversify?
You see, go ahead.
Duke Ellington never saw his music as something that was labeled. Like they say jazz is a label, but like jazz is music. Like jazz is classical just as much as it is rock and roll, and you can play anything in between. So long as it's good, that's what it is. And like that's all he's ever done is good music. So
I think his approach is very, very good because he teaches a lot of musicians that they need to be a lot more entrepreneurial about their activities and think more, and how am I going to spread my music out there besides just playing gigs, making records,
a wider palette.
Think about how many people, just love those theme songs for those commercials or for MASH and, Mission Impossible and whatnot, and think to themselves, who is this guy? They just go check him out. It's Benny Golson, and they turn out to be fans of it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, probably the first and most important thing I ever learned about music is just that you got to keep an open mind. And I mean, I think Benny Golson definitely exemplifies that pretty well.
About the question that you asked specifically about the question, I think that like kind of along the lines of what Eric was saying is that you don't necessarily know that Benny Golson considers himself a jazz musician as much as like a musician, and it's like people call him a jazz musician, but it's like maybe he just feels like he's a writer and a saxophone player and he plays music, and it's like he improvises, so if that's jazz, then throw it in that bin or whatever.
We were talking about Duke Ellington. He said something along the lines of, there's two kinds of music. There's music that's pleasing to the ear and music that is not pleasing to the ear.
What's interesting too is your background as musicians coming up, going to school, and actually being educated in bebop, in jazz, in in Western classical music. Consider when Benny grew up, and we read a little bit about his process, was just hearing music on the radio and trying to notate it and figuring out what it was. Before you had the process of all these method books and how-to jazz books, and a lot of these guys just found their way just from listening to music. Do you guys find a relationship in that with the way that you've done music?
Because from my experience, I mean, as opposed to them, I'm a business major at Loyola, and I've been studying music on my own for as long as I can remember. And you know, I'm putting myself in Benny's shoes. You know, back then, you know, a lot of it had to be done by yourself. You know, you had to figure it out on your own. There was no teacher telling you, you know, this is what you need to do, this is what you must do. So I can't relate a lot with that because I've learned a lot from playing, from experience with other musicians, and I'm sure that's what he did, you know, not going to university or whatnot. But the experience today is different, and he now is part of the idiom that everybody learns in school. That's so important.
I think we've had several clinicians. I've been to several clinics, and they're not. There's definitely not a sense among all the elder musicians that like school is the way to go. You know, like a lot of them seem to think that like it's cool and all that you can go to school and get the degree and say that you have a Bachelor of Arts in Jazz Studies, but that doesn't mean that you can play the piano or anything else. You know, and it's like. It's something that like I think anybody nowadays that makes it as a musician, even if they've gone to school, like they still went out every night or every other night and checked out music, and they went out and they studied CDs at home and they listened to their favorite records 1,000 times. And it's like that's the only problem with school is that like because you have to go to school and do all that work, it'll suck that creative life out of you sometimes, and that those guys didn't, you know, their whole life was waking up in the morning and playing saxophone all day. You know, and it's like, there's definitely, you know, that has its merits as well.
I think an important thing as a student you have to consider, especially a music student, you know, is you can't complete your assignments or like learn whatever mode you have to learn, and then at the end of 4 years, you know, you're a certified jazz musician. Like, no, like once you complete your assignments, then you can begin practicing all the other stuff you got to be accountable for, you know, and a lot of that is going out and listening, sitting in, you know, studying with people outside of school, you know, just playing with people who are better than you, and luckily we're getting that opportunity through school as well today.
Well, all these great musicians like Benny have really their individual voice, and so you can put on a record and say, oh, that's Benny Golson, or that's Wayne Shorter, or that's Lee Morgan, or whoever. It's like, how do you guys think you're going to develop your individual voice?
I'm sorry, that's a great question.
Through a lot of playing.
Playing,
Playing,
transcribing, practicing.
finding what you like about your playing, and like focusing on that, and the stuff that you don't like, just, you know, kind of not, you know, just let that stuff pass through, and really hone the stuff that's cool and work on the stuff that's not as cool. But yeah, I mean, I think it's like you have to sort of almost become aware that you're playing the same, like 2/3 of your solo was a Philly Joe Jones solo that you transcribed, you know, and you have to just be honest with yourself and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to start changing this up, you know, because I think it's a natural process where you start to get tired of not playing your own stuff, and you want to reach for something further than that, you know. I think but I definitely agree that, you know, you can't, most people, except for like maybe a chosen few, you can't find out what you sound like by yourself until you've like practiced a whole lot of stuff that everybody else did, you know.
A lot of people, it might take 10, 20, 30 years before they really have a true voice. And that takes a lot of dedication to really want to have a journey like that. What are your thoughts on that?
There was the last clinic I went to was this guy named Scarrett. He's also a saxophone player, and he passed out a bunch of quotes. And one of the quotes was from Eddie Harris, and it said, the music business is the only business in the world where you can find success before you're good at what you do. And I think that's like, it's a very subjective thing, you know, like who gets popular and who doesn't always have a lot of bearing on who's the best and who's not, you know. But
I think it's important to point out something that I read about Andrew Hill, very influential pianist, jazz pianist. He said that as a musician, if you want to develop your own voice, you need to go in and for a long while, just alienate yourself from everything you learned outside. Just dedicate to your sound. Play what you know from inside out, not from outside in.
that's cool.
Well, listen, we're going to go through this whole process tonight. You guys are going to be actively involved with Mr. Golson, and afterwards we're going to revisit everything and come back and say, well, what did that feel like? And what were your reactions? And do I feel change from this experience? So we'll see what happens after the masterclass.